myself, NCATE's coming, who's NCATE and why do I care? I literally knew nothing about it.
Sure.
And so really, after I did a little bit of research, I said, this is an accrediting agency. This is something serious. So literally the first week I was on the job, I went to NCATE training from the state of South Carolina to learn more about NCATE. And at that time, they were moving away from things like just reviewing syllabi to actually looking at assessments and how are the students coming out of the programs. Do they know this stuff? So that was a shift in a thought process in the accrediting process. And so we had to get into a mindset that, hey, it's no longer, we can no longer just say, ship syllabi to the accrediting agency and say, hey, we're doing what we're saying. We had to show them some type of evidence that, hey, our students are coming out with the knowledge that we say they're learning from the syllabi. And so that was just a different mindset. So we had to, really buckle down and figure out how to make this happen.
Mm-hmm. Continuing on that, as you eventually took over as provost, and I guess provost and also executive vice chancellor for academic affairs.
Vice chancellor for academic affairs. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. For those who are not fully aware of what a provost does at a university, what is your day like? What kind of tasks do you have? What does it look like?
Well, the short answer to that is I'm a professional meeting goer.
Okay.
I spend most of my days just meeting either with students, faculty, administrators, public, whoever. So I go to a lot of meetings. Essentially, in my position, I have all the academics that report to me. So all the academic units on campus report to me. So I'm in charge of the faculty, the unit heads who are over the faculty. I'm also in charge of the curriculum.
Right.
But also I have the admissions office that falls under me, and all that goes with that, financial aid office, military and student and veteran success center. And so there's a lot of what the university falls under my auspices. But I consider it mostly the academic side, or at least the academic support services as well, like the library and the tutoring center and stuff like that. And so, it just takes a lot just to meet with the folks who are responsible for making things happen. I look at my job as being a facilitator, giving the tools to the people who actually do the job, making sure the faculty have what they need to do the job, making sure the unit heads have what they need to do their jobs. And ultimately, our bottom line is we want our students to be successful and graduate from college. And so that's what we put all our efforts into.
Can you tell me a little bit about what means you've worked to put into place to make that happen? I know that retention is a big focus there. I also understand that your enrollment has increased significantly while you've been provost. Can you tell me about the concrete things you've looked at, policies you've looked at to try and make that happen?
Some of the things, we actually had a committee, we call it RPG committee, Retention, Progression, and Graduation Committee, take a look at some of the policies and procedures we have in place and what were some of the roadblocks that might be, that unintended roadblocks that maybe slowed people down, or what were things we could do to help our students progress in a timely manner. And so just give you a couple of concrete, simple things.
Yeah.
Were no cost was one of the things when you read the literature is that most students who decide to leave school and because they're not doing well make this decision within the first 6 weeks of class. And so, our thought was, what happens if we take attendance in the first 6 weeks of class and report on that attendance and report it to our Center for Student Achievement, who then looks at, hey, if somebody's missing a lot of classes, let's give them a phone call and say, hey, notice that you're missing some classes. Can we help you in any way? Is there something going on we need to know about or we can help you with? And so just something simple as taking attendance for the first 6 to 8 weeks of classes has helped retain more students. The other thing is particularly in the freshman and sophomore year, is that, what about midterm grades? If the student knew what their midterm grade was, can they make a more informed decision about whether to continue in the course, get help in the course, or drop a course?
Right.
And so we started instituting just, for those people who teach freshman and sophomore level classes, put a midterm grade down so that the students know what it is, and so that the students can talk to their advisor and say, hey, I'm getting a D at midterm right now, and do you think I ought to drop the class, or do you think, so they can talk to somebody about what that grade is and what it means, and help them make a decision.
Sure.
And the third thing that went along with that was that we moved the drop date, where you can drop and still get a grade to W, a little bit later in the semester, so that that they can talk to their advisor during the time that advisement occurs, because advisement used to occur after the drop date. So the student never really, unless they took the initiative to talk to somebody about dropping, they just sort of made the decision on their own without talking to anybody.
Right.
But now if you make the drop date so that's after advisement, they are talking to their advisor, so their advisor can look up their midterm grade and say, hey, I notice you're getting a D or an F in this course. Let's talk about that. What are the issues you're having? Do you think you ought to drop the class so that you don't get an F, which is going to cause your GPA to go down, which can cause a whole series of other things to occur?
Right.
And so just those simple acts in itself, we saw our retention rate go up. And also we saw, you talk about DWF rates in college, the number of Ds, number of Fs, and the number of Ws. Mm-hmm. And so when we implemented these strategies, what we saw was that the number in Ds and Fs decreased. The number of Ws actually increased a little bit, but more importantly, the numbers of A's, B's, and C's increased significantly. And so, that's what you want. You want to see more A, B's, and C's in classes, and you want people to withdraw when they absolutely have to. And so, all of that has helped our retention rates increase, which then helps our progression and then helps graduation.
Right.
That's together. So those are just three simple things we did that have worked.
When you took over as first provost, did you have a kind of philosophy or a direction in mind out of the gate?
I'd love to say I was that intelligent enough to know what the heck I was doing. I wasn't. I had no clue what I was getting myself into.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if I want to publish that, but that's true. I mean, you go into it with some sort of knowledge. I certainly knew the previous executive vice chancellor and had an inkling of what they did. Mm-hmm. But you really never know until you get into it and are in those shoes. And of course, then when I took over, they added some responsibilities that the previous vice chancellor didn't have.
Right.
And so I was learning as I was going along. Again, my philosophy has always been, whether I was dean of the School of Ed or director of the Ruth Patrick Science Ed Center, I was a facilitator.
Mm-hmm.
My job is to help the people who actually are hitting the ground and boots on the ground doing the stuff, make sure they have the tools necessary to do what they do. And that's the I take that philosophy now as the executive vice chancellor, is that my job is to make sure that the faculty and the unit heads and everybody else who works or falls under me, that they have the necessary tools to do what they do. Because if they have the necessary tools to do what they do, then we're going to be able to help our students do well.
Right. I'm going to drill down just a little bit more, because one of the things I noticed, which seemed remarkable to me, was the number of programs, academic programs, curricula you added in your time as provost. A lot of them like applied math, applied computer science, things like that, as well as maybe at least a dozen others as I'm looking at this. Was there any? What were your thoughts on that? And was there any kind of was your thought process driving what areas to go into to open these programs up?
You got to put it all in context.
Mm-hmm.
From 2008 until the new chancellor came on board, Dr. Jordan came on board. At the same time, I became executive vice chancellor. We had very little growth at the university, but part of that was because the economy tanked.
Mm-hmm.
2008, the economy hit bottom, and so that means our funding wasn't where it needed to be. And so where other universities were furloughing faculty and staff, we were not. We maintained where we were, and we didn't try to grow because we couldn't, because we didn't have the finances to do it.
Right.
so when we got the new chancellor on board and I became executive vice chancellor, at this point we said, if we want to grow at all, and we'll have to grow because we don't have the state resources, we're going to have to grow the number of students we have. And in order to grow the number of students you have to either add new programs or do something that's going to attract additional students to what we currently have. Mm-hmm. And so then we start, the chancellor had a study done by an outside organization that looked at different types of majors that we might have. She also at that time did a strategic planning process that involved over 600 people from local community and campus to figure out, hey, what do you guys want in the community mm-hmm. from us? What are the programs we could put in place that will help you out